Welcome to the IMFG Investment Update. My name is Scott Douglas, I'm a director at IMFG. I have here with me Dr. Steve Garth. Steve is on our investment committee. Steve, there's been a lot of talk about trade wars in the media lately and what's been happening. What's going on? What's the impact that this is likely to have on Australia and our economy and our share market?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Well, certainly in the last year, China in particular has targeted some of Australia's industries with a raft of sanctions. So, for example, the lobster industry, the beef industry and the wine industry have all been hit by these sanctions from China. Until recently, China accounted for 96% of export sales of Southern Rock lobster, so losing that market has been devastating for business. Beef was Australia's biggest agricultural export. Last May, China suspended imports from Australia's largest cooperatively owned abattoir. And Scott, an industry close to your heart is wine. China accounted for more than 40% of all Australian wine exports and 50% of red wine exports before the tariffs hit. So that's fallen to near zero now.
So Steve, presumably being invested in one of these industries has had an impact. If you've been invested in beef or wine or the lobster industry, what are we sort of seeing having an impact on the individual stocks versus the market itself?
Yeah, so that's right, Scott. Obviously, the individual stocks that are associated with those industries are going to get hit. The chart up here shows Treasury Wine Estate, and you can see how that stock has been affected by the announcement that China was potentially going to put tariffs on Australian wine. So being invested in the single stock has not been so good. Mm-hmm. And you compare that to the overall market, and the overall market seems to be going pretty well. So it really speaks to the fact that, yes, if you're associated with those industries that have been hit, or if you're invested in those particular stocks, it's not so good. But it hasn't affected the overall stock market. That seems to be going ahead as if nothing has changed.
Right, so being invested across the various asset classes in a diversified portfolio is going to reduce that risk.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, Scott, is that when we're talking about lobster, beef and wine, while they're important industries and very important to people who work in those industries, of course they're overall a small part of the Australian economy. Believe it or not, while China has imposed these sanctions on those particular industries, in fact our exports to China have grown over the last year. Right. And that's got to do with iron ore. Australia makes high quality iron ore and China has strong demand for that at the moment.
Thanks, Steve, that's great. So what we really need to do is stick with our plan and we focus on having a diversified portfolio. And thanks very much for providing us that insight.
Terrific. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.